Hello, everybody. Quick housekeeping announcement. First of all, I think YouTube had some issues with daylight savings because I set this to go live at 9:30, but for some reason YouTube started promoting it as 10:30. So people might not be expecting it to be this early, but it definitely meant 9:30 UK time, or British summertime as opposed to GMT. Anyway, I'm not quite sure what happened with YouTube on that front, but hopefully whoever is watching can still see and hear me. Will quickly jump into the comments. Cheekster will have to watch this on catch up, as I will be at an unlimited screening of Death of a Unicorn when this is live tomorrow evening. See, that makes me think YouTube has messed it up even more, because it's not tomorrow evening. It's just now. Who else have we got? Collector Movie Man. I'm doing good, mate. It's as I said, yep, it is night time here. It's at 9:30 or 9:40-ish now. It's supposed to be, but I think YouTube had it as going live at 10:30. But guys, give me a thumbs up in the chat if you can see and hear me okay. And we'll just crack straight on with the Letterboxd reviews. So let's see. Going through January's watch list on this live stream, we'll scroll down to the bottom. Running a bit behind on the the what I watched live stream. So we're doing January just now. Next week or the week after, we'll do a combined February and March, because there wasn't that much to go through in February and March, because most of what I watched was at the Glasgow Film Festival, which was a separate live stream that I did a week or so ago, which I will link to below. But anyway, let's crack on. The first movie in January 2025. So you'll see here we've got Man of Steel, Jaws 2, Batman vs Superman, and Zack Snyder's Justice League. We'll put Jaws 2 to the end, and we'll go through the Snyderverse movies, as it were. This is something I've been wanting to do for quite a while, pretty much since since the Zack Snyder's cut of Justice League came out, God, was it 2021 or 2022 that was to watch all three of the Snyder movies back to back to back. I also want my son had also been wanting to watch them, and I was wanting to show him these movies, specifically Man of Steel, before the new Superman, before James Gunn's Superman comes out. Not because I'm ready to hate on James Gunn's Superman. I'm not. I want it to be amazing. I'm hoping it is amazing. The trailer was a little bit underwhelming, to be honest. But yeah, I just wanted I wanted to show the kid Man of Steel, because even though I'm not ready to hate on James Gunn's Superman, I am a huge Henry Cavill fan, especially of him in this role. So yeah, wanted to watch that, and I've always liked this. I liked it when it came out. I remember way back when Bryan Singer's Superman Returns was leading up to its release. I remember, or even not even leading up to its release, I remember they did something that was I thought it was quite unique at the time. It was the early days of well, not the early days of the internet, but it was the early days of movie fandom on the internet. And I remember for Bryan Singer's Superman Returns, they were doing weekly or monthly, almost like vlogs, behind the scenes stuff, which I remember the office that I was working in at the time. Shout out to Paul if you're watching. I remember we would eagerly sit and watch them and wait for the updates of the for Superman Returns. Anyway, Superman Returns, the build up for that was quite epic, but then the actual movie itself was a bit of a damp squid, I thought. It was very slowly paced. I mean, I thought it looked great. I think it was one of the first big budget films to be shot fully on digital, following on from the Star Wars prequels. I think Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith. Anyway, getting sidetracked here. So yeah, so Superman Returns wasn't amazing, to be honest. I think Bryan Singer was too much of a slave to the pace and the tone of Superman 1 and Superman 2 of the Richard Donner movies. So he made Superman Returns, where Superman doesn't really throw a punch, doesn't really do anything, get into a fight. He makes some saves, but yeah, it wasn't that great. So when I heard that Zack Snyder was doing a Superman reboot, and it was from a script by, I think, David Goyer, and Christopher Nolan, who's obviously had the success with the Batman movies, was producing. I was quite excited for that. And then it came out, and other than a wee bit too much of a video game feel for the final fight, I really liked it, really enjoyed it. So yeah, started off with that, Man of Steel, and we went straight from Man of Steel to, if I skip back here, we'll come back to Jaws 2, straight into Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice. Again, very hyped for this. I vividly remember when they announced it at Comic-Con, after it wasn't long after I think Man of Steel had came out. They announced it. They announced Batman vs Superman at Comic-Con in a very, very cool way. It's on YouTube, I'll link to it below, where they basically had one of the actors, the actor who plays the General, and then later Martian Manhunter in Zack Snyder's Justice League, which I don't think for a second was always the plan. I think that was retrofitted, but it worked. Anyway, so they had him on stage, and he did a reading from Frank Miller's The Dark Knight, the speech that Batman gives Superman after he's beat him in the fight. So they did that by way of it to announce that the Man of Steel sequel was actually going to be Batman vs Superman, and the crowd went absolutely nuts. And then they revealed the logo, and I was so hyped for that from that moment on. And they hadn't even started filming the movie yet. I don't even know if they'd written the script yet, but from that moment on, I was hyped. I was so hyped, in fact, I wonder if I can bring it up here. I actually, where is it? Do I have it?
First of all,
So if I bring this over, so on my Instagram, you can see here. Oh, it's not making it big. Anyway, way back when they announced it, I got a local artist whose name escapes me. I'm really sorry. He was doing like a deal on like custom spray painted canvases. So I got him to do the. Why I want to show a big screen? God damn it, Instagram. Anyway, so that canvas there, that canvas there, in the middle, I got that commissioned for Batman versus Superman, like within a few days of that announcement and of the logo coming up. So from that moment on, I was mega hyped for that movie. And then I remember when the first trailer came out, it was hang on, let me go back over here. Oh no, I've lost my letterboxd list. Right, bear with me while I fix this, folks. So yeah, when the trailer was announced for Batman vs Superman, sorry, not when the trailer was announced, when the trailer came out, I remember being on holiday. I think I was in Spain or Lanzarote or something like that, and I remember like desperately trying to find Wi-Fi in like a local pub so I could watch the trailer because I was that desperate to watch it. When Ben Affleck was announced as Batman, I went on record as being very much a fan of that. I thought he'd be a great Batman, especially like a middle-aged Batman, i.e. Dark Knight Returns. I still think he was a great Batman. He's actually my favourite Batman. Yes, even more so than Michael Keaton, even though I'm a child of the 80s and the 90s, and even though Batman Forever was like the Batman that I watched the most as a child, because that came out when I was like 12 or 13, so that was my first like cinema experience of Batman. Anyway, long story short, was hyped for Batman vs Superman. Trailer came out, loved it. When I first saw the movie in the cinema, I vividly remember that opening shot where like a young Bruce Wayne is like being levitated by the bats. I remember thinking, oh no, what are they doing? But then, luckily it's explained that that's just a bit of a dream sequence. So yeah, wasn't massively overwhelmed with Batman vs Superman when I saw it in the cinema, but when the extended cut came out, I liked it a lot more. So I'll just read from my my brief letterboxed blurb. The Ultimate Edition extended cut is long, so it's 3 hours, but it really does flesh out the character's motivations, especially why Clark Kent / Superman is not a fan of the Batman. Watched it as part of a Snyder trilogy marathon, and definitely does feel, as much as I do like Dawn of Justice, it feels like we're missing a Man of Steel 2 in between Man of Steel 1 and Batman vs Superman. Like Batman v Superman starts, and we're there. Lois and Clark have fallen in love. They've moved in together. He's working at the Daily Planet. Now I know at the end of Man of Steel you see him on day one, but yeah, I do love it. I do love the Snyder trilogy. I do like Batman vs Superman. The Ultimate Cut is a much better movie, but I do feel like we were missing a Man of Steel 2 in between. That would have been nice to see. Anyway, let's jump quickly into the chat and see who's there. Where's my chat gone? Is it here? Nope. Hang on. Where's the chat gone? Socials, there we go. Right. Let's jump back. So we've got Rakesh saying super hyped also, but left the cinema feeling flat after watching this. We talking about Man of Steel or Batman versus Superman? Probably Batman versus Superman, because I might have been with you on that one. Jump back up here. Collector Movie Man. Can see in here you're doing good, man. It's 4:43 in Michigan, United States. Hello to Michigan, United States. Nice and early there. How's your Sunday been going? Seen 11 movies this month. March 1st, The Rookie. Oh, the Clint Eastwood Charlie Sheen movie. That's a good one. I've not seen that in a while. I've just realised I'm quite low in the frame. Hang on. Let me see if I can drag this stool up. Nope, that's just all as it goes. I'll sit up straight. There we go. The Help, Last Breath. I've not seen that one yet. Is that the one with Simu Liu and Woody Harrelson? That did look pretty good. To Kill a Mockingbird. That's I've only seen that once. That's one of my partner's favourite movies. We watched that not too long ago, actually. That's one of my. So I've got the steelbook of it, but it got damaged like in the post because it came from like a random eBay seller. So that's like a black mark in my OCD collector's brain because I know I have the steelbook, but it's like bent out of shape and black bag. Yeah, let me know if Last Breath is any good, because that's something I was maybe going to try and catch in the cinema. Well, we're continuing through the list. Star Wars, A Jedi's Tale, the animated series, didn't even know that existed. Flow, that's the animated one that won Best Picture. Am I right in saying that's the one there's no dialogue at all? Young Women in the Sea, that's the one with, what's her face, Rey Skywalker? Yeah, I saw the trailer for that, wasn't too thingy, but let me know about Last Breath. Matt versus movies. The Ultimate Cut is my preferred version. I think it's anyone who's a remote fan of it, it's probably their preferred version. I think people who aren't fans of the Snyderverse are probably not going to bother with an extended cut of Batman v Superman, so I don't think they would compare it. But I think everyone who's seen them both can agree that the extended cut, even though it is like 3 hours long or close to 3 hours long, it is a better movie. I don't think anyone would dispute that. The updated cut was also weak. Really? Do you think? So even though I've just said I think everyone would prefer the updated cut, clearly not everyone. Magazine Dreams, Sing Sing and the Mighty Ducks. We'll get to Sing Sing. That's actually, I'm pretty sure that's on my January list. Have you seen Magazine Dreams? Oh wait, is that the you're just saying that because you've got a man crush on Jonathan Majors because he's all jacked up in that. Everyone does, don't worry. I like the older version of Bruce Wayne. Yeah, me too. I'm sad that we didn't get a solo Batfleck movie, but that's like a worthy of a video on it in itself. The 4K Master does. I'm assuming we're still talking about the Snyderverse movies. The 4K treatment that I'm doing is. What do people think about Ben Affleck as Batman? That's a good point. This is we're going to peel the curtain back a little bit here. This particular commenter is a friend of mine in real life, and we have since this movie came out almost 10 years ago, this dude still owes me money because we had a bet on that Ben Affleck would be a good Batman. The bet wasn't if he was the best Batman. The bet was, if he is a good Batman, then this said person, loses the bet and owes me a tenner. To this day, I contend that he still owes me that money because Ben Affleck was a good Batman. He might not be your favourite Batman, that's okay, but he was a good Batman. So, let me know in the comments below, was Ben Affleck a good Batman? Doesn't have to be your favourite, but was he a good Batman? Yes or no? And then maybe I'll get my money off of this fool. Christian Bale for me has been the best ever. Michael Keaton is a close second. Yeah, but that just shows your age. No, Christian Bale was. But so The Dark Knight is my favourite Batman movie by far. But I still think Ben Affleck was a great Batman. Last Breath was really good. Kept me on the edge of my seat. I might try and, if that's still out in the cinema this week, I might try and catch that. The trailer and the poster did look intriguing. It's one of those movies where you think, ooh, I'm surprised that got a cinema release. Like, that seems like a movie that would go straight to streaming. Anyway, while I catch my breath and my voice cracks, let's crack on with the list. Let's go back over here. Right, so obviously after Batman vs Superman, Dawn of Justice, we go straight into, I'll take this comment off, Zack Snyder's Justice League. So, I should have brought in the I've actually got a couple of different versions of this on physical media, but probably the most expensive piece of physical media I bought is one of the Mother Box editions of the movie. I should have brought that in before I started the stream. If my good lady happens to be watching next door, could you bring in the Mother Box? She won't actually know what that is. So that big heavy like chest looking thing that's like kind of dark green that's on the shelf that you've been lovingly moving about and getting out of the road of the living room. Could you bring that in if you're watching? Thank you. Anyway, so finishing off the Snyderverse trilogy with the 4-hour cut of Zack Snyder's Justice League. Again, as I said, wanted to show the kid the Snyderverse movies, specifically Man of Steel, but, you know, I'd been wanting to do the Snyder trilogy since Zack Snyder's Justice League came out. I'm just quickly scan through what I actually wrote on kind of my Letterboxd notes. So for anyone who actually is on Letterboxd and reads, you know, my page, most of the reviews that I've put on Letterboxd, it's either going to be like a transcript of my YouTube review of said movie, or it'll be random notes that I've taken to potentially make a video of. So it's not full reviews. But anyway, so it definitely feels like a continuation of Man of Steel and Batman vs Superman. So it definitely feels like, you know, like part 3 of that franchise, even though I said I think we were missing a Man of Steel 2 before Batman v Superman. Didn't need to be 4 hours long. I think it could have been cut down to 3. I know there was an episodic nature to it, because at one point I know they were talking about, or at least it was rumoured, that they were going to split it up into like episodes for HBO Max. But the fact that we got this cut is a miracle. It is great, but it does make me mourn the Snyderverse just a little bit. Like, I desperately wanted to see a Ben Affleck solo Batman movie, but we'll never get to see that. I remember when, like, I'm sure he did like test shoots with Joe Manganiello as not Deadpool, Deathstroke. But, you know, that then kind of like Affleck stepped away, and kind of eventually that morphed into like Matt Reeves was going to be directing Ben Affleck, and then Ben Affleck stepped out, and then Matt Reeves was making his own Batman movie, and we got the Robert Pattinson Batman movie, which is a great movie. Didn't like him as Batman, but that's a different video. But it's a good movie. A lot of Cyborg in this. It's almost like a mini origin story for Cyborg. It's by no means a perfect movie. Neither is Batman v Superman or Man of Steel, but I definitely did connect with these movies quite a lot. You know, they're much darker than the MCU in tone. There's a different pace to them. And I'm a diehard MCU fan, but I quite liked that the DCEU, you know, the Snyderverse, was going in a different direction stylistically and tonally. I think, you know, the studios and the powers that be panicked a little bit, you know, after the box office wasn't like billions. I mean, they still made hundreds of millions, but they didn't make as much as I think they needed them to make. And, you know, what happened. The Justice League cut that we ended up getting was abysmal. There's one friend in my group of friends who thought that was fine, who quite liked the theatrical cut of Justice League, and I'm campaigning to have him removed from our friend group, but that's probably not going to happen. But yeah, I'm very glad that we got Zack Snyder's Justice League. I think it's a great continuation of the Snyderverse, but it definitely feels unfinished. Not the movie, the story. Like, it didn't feel like a satisfying conclusion to the DCEU, and, you know, we'll never know, because that's it, finished now. Like, what was technically the last DCEU movie? Was it Aquaman 2? Which is, that's quite sad to think. In fact, if the last movie in the DCEU was in fact Aquaman 2, does that mean that the last shot of the DCEU is the end credit scene where Orm is eating the burger with the cockroach? Is that really the legacy that's left from the DCEU? That's quite sad. Anyway, I'll miss it, and I'll lament the movies that we almost got. Right, let's jump back into the chat real quick. Oh, the chat window keeps disappearing. Where'd it go? Right, Collector Movie Man, have to disagree. I'm not a big fan of Night of Ben Affleck as Batman. I don't think he was that good. Didn't think he pulled it off as well. Damn it, you're not helping my argument to win that bet, mate. Matt versus movies. Who do you want to play Batman in the new DC universe? I know there's been like a fan movement that Alan Ritchson, the guy who plays Reacher, I think he would be good. I would be happy to see him. I think as well there was like, fan casting. There's been the guy from Supernatural and The Boys, whose name escapes me. I don't know. I think probably Alan Ritchson. Like I'd be happy. I would be happy if they cast him. I'd be happy if they cast Alan Ritchson. I think my favourite Zack Snyder DC movies is Man of Steel. I'm not a fan of the rest of them. I would probably agree. I like all three of them more or less on an equal amount, I think. Maybe BVS a little bit more. I think probably BVS would be my favourite. But they're all, I would put them all on like a kind of like 7.5-ish out of 10. Matt versus movies. It's a shame we didn't get part 2 to Justice League. It definitely is, because you could see where they were going with the story. Obviously Darkseid set up to come back. If the storyline and the script, story treatments that I read online are true, that would have been quite a good story, I think, to go out on. Have you heard that Alan Richard wants to play Batman? Yeah, true. Alan, I think his name is Alan Ritchson. I've been binging season 3 of Reacher literally the past week or so. I think I've only got 1 or maybe 2 episodes left to go. The other person I've heard is Clint Eastwood's son might play Batman. Scott Eastwood, I think. He was in 1 or 2 of the Fast and the Furious movies, wasn't he? I'd be okay with that as well. I do think you need... I always think of Batman as being like quite a big guy, like a tall built guy, like the Frank Miller's The Dark Knight like version of Batman. I just always think of him as a big guy. I think that's partly why I like Ben Affleck, because he's tall, like he's taller than Superman. And I think even though yes, Superman has powers and could destroy Batman and all that jazz, but I think just when you see them, facing off against each other, Batman being a little bit taller, I always like that. Like I think it's maybe why I didn't gel with or partly why I didn't gel with Robert Pattinson. He doesn't seem physically imposing or like a physical threat in the same way that Ben Affleck did. So that's maybe part of it. Anyway, yeah. So let's jump back here. There we go. So that was the first 3 movies of the year, the Snyder trilogy. As I said, I wanted to show the kid, and he did quite enjoy them. In between them, hang on, let me just take this comment off. In between them, we watched Jaws 2. 2 of the ladies in the house, Jaws is their favourite movie. We had seen Jaws a lot, had and will continue to watch it a lot, but in between the Snyderverse movies, they were choosing a movie to watch, and rather than watching Jaws 1 for the 40th time, not that it's a bad movie, it's an amazing movie, which is 50 this year, which is crazy to think about. Anyway, so the girls chose Jaws 2, which, in my extremely in-depth Letterboxd review, I say it's not a terrible sequel, but still, it's not Jaws. That's pretty much it. Not terrible, but still, it's not Jaws. I like the helicopter stuff at the end. I like the kids being stranded and next to the, cable junction thing. There's one thing I think that's unforgivable with Jaws 2, and it's the cheesy line that Brody has when he's like banging the oar on the big cable thing. And he says, "Say ah," as the shark's jumping towards him. Like, obviously they're trying to recreate that "smile you son of a bitch" moment from the first one, but they failed miserably, because that's a terrible, terrible line, and you must, you feel bad for Roy Schneider thinking, like, he must have known that was a terrible line when he was saying it, but, ever the trooper, he continued. Yeah. Jaws 2, not terrible. Not as bad as Jaws, the other, it's the best Jaws sequel. It's better than Jaws 3, and it's better than Jaws the Revenge. But, Jaws, the original, which is 50, is an absolute classic. Right, let's quickly jump back into the comments. So Rakesh says, feel like the DC universe has been stopping and starting for some time, so much so, not much hype for the new Superman movie. I'm not sure James Gunn can fix it. Yeah, I feel like I'm behind the comments here. The James Gunn Superman movie, I'm just not that hyped for it. Like, I'm not hating on it in the same way that a lot of like diehard Cavill fans are, even though I am a diehard Cavill fan, and I've got a bet on with Sky Bet that he would be the new Superman. So hopefully I win that, but that's been a bet for about 8 years. So we'll see. Anyway, yeah, I'm not hyped for the James Gunn Superman movie either. The trailer that came out was pretty underwhelming, I thought. But you know, who knows? It could end up being amazing. Sometimes movies look terrible and they end up being great. Sometimes movies look great and they end up being terrible. I just got the Jaws 3 and Jaws 4 on 4K Steelbook, both movies. Yeah, I'm a little bit miffed at the studio for that one, because they just, like, a year prior to that, or maybe 2 years at the most, but like within the last 18 months, say, they released Blu-ray Steelbooks of Jaws 3 and Jaws 4, so I picked up them to go with the Jaws 1 and Jaws 2 Steelbooks that I've got, and then they go ahead and released 4K versions. Really annoyed at them for that. They did the same thing recently with Demolition Man. They brought out a new Steelbook, like, less than a year ago, or about a year ago, and then they bring out the 4K Steelbook. It's just, yeah, it's cash grabbing. And with Jaws 3 and Jaws 4, like, I want to have them in the collection, but I'm not going to double dip on them. I've already got the recently released Blu-ray Steelbooks. I'm not going to double dip on them, so the Jaws 3 and Jaws 4K Steelbooks can get to, because that's just a massive cash grab. Now I have the complete trilogy of Jaws. Not sure if that's meant to be a joke, because there's 4 of them. I'm assuming that's a joke that I'm just not getting. Memory of Jaws 2, smile, you son of a... That's... Surely you're joking, because that's the line from Jaws 1. I'm going to give you a pass on that, Rakesh, because that's the line from Jaws 1. If you are being serious and you're messing up that line, that's just shameful. That's absolutely shameful. And you should be ashamed. Collector Movie Man, actually... What's your name again, so I can stop saying Collector Movie Man? I want to say Mike, but I think I might be wrong. Looking forward to the new Superman movie. Second most anticipated movie of the year. First is Avatar 3. I was talking about Avatar 3 the other day, because my youngest is actually a big Avatar fan, as am I. So yeah, that's what is my most hyped movie for this year? It's not Superman. It would be, I think, Avatar, and I'm actually quite looking forward to the Thunderbolts. Even though, and this is something, so side quest, or the so yeah, Avatar 3 and Thunderbolts, I think, Fantastic Four as well. But the Marvel live stream that lasted 5 days, you know, the one where they were putting the chairs or announcing the cast members, cool idea, stretched it to the nth degree. I think they were just curious, how much money could we make from YouTube and from the social media platforms from having 10 million people watch a live stream? My guess is quite a lot. Anyway, so they announced all this cast, and there's a good few names that they announced for Doomsday that are cast members of Fantastic Four and the Thunderbolts. Now, obviously, no one knows for sure, but it does feel like, especially for the Thunderbolts, by announcing the names of most of the Thunderbolts, by saying most of these guys are going to be in Doomsday, do you not think that kind of like takes a little bit of the suspense away from from Thunderbolts? Because we now know Sebastian Stan, Florence Pugh, and all Lewis Pullman, who's probably going to be Sentry, and you know the rest of them, David Harbour, Red Guardian, like, and the others. Now we know they're going to be in Doomsday. So when you go and see Thunderbolts, anytime those characters are in peril, you're like, well, you know, we know they're not going to die because they're in Doomsday. It feels like an odd move from Marvel, especially because we're only like, 5 or 6 weeks away from the release of Thunderbolts. Like, they could have waited until after Thunderbolts to put that video out. Yeah, I thought that was an odd choice. But other than the fact that it lasted five hours, I did think it was quite cool. And obviously the surprises that we got, you know, the original X-Men cast, James Marsden, Patrick Stewart, Kelsey Grammer, Ian McKellen, Gambit as well, Channing Tatum, they were all cool to see. I would have maybe made the live stream last half an hour, not 5.5 hours, and I would have held back on the Thunderbolts cast, because now you know those guys are in Doomsday, so when you're watching Thunderbolts you're going to be thinking, well, they're not going to die, clearly. Anyway, that's my thoughts on that. I know, hang on, did that one already. David, sorry mate, I don't know where I got Mike from. David, Collector Movie Man. My bad, open wide. Ah, yes, the Jaws 2 line. Okay, I'll forgive you for that one. The hype, yeah, I get what you're saying. Now you know what's kind of going to happen, the movie releasing with... Yeah, exactly, it's such an odd choice, I thought. Like, I remember when Endgame came out, like, they were so... Because Spider-Man Far From Home was due to come out very quickly after that, I think. And I remember there being like a big discussion around that time, like, should we not talk about Spider-Man, because, you know, people know the movie's coming out, but like that's one character, and, you know, it's one of your main characters, you know he's getting a sequel. With the Thunderbolts, like, in theory, like, by definition, the Thunderbolts are, let's face it, it's a collection of sidekicks, you know. Any of them could, in theory, it could be believed, or it's believable that any of them could die in the movie. But now we know that they don't, because they're in Doomsday. So yeah, I thought that was an odd choice. Right, let's crack on, because we've got a good few movies to get to. So after the Snyderverse trilogy, went to the cinema to see Mufasa: The Lion King. Wasn't as bad as I'm just going to read my Letterboxd review. It wasn't as bad as I was expecting, but it's not exactly great either. It suffers from the same soullessness, if that's a word, that the 2009 live action version suffered from. Barry Jenkins was an interesting choice as director, so that kind of intrigued me, but I didn't really see him in the movie. I didn't see his vision or his voice, for lack of a better phrase. And while Aaron Pierre, I think, is definitely a rising star. In fact, has he not been cast as in the new Green Lantern series as Jon Stewart? I think he has, taking it back to DC. Rebel Ridge was brilliant, one of my favourite movies of 2024. Crap, I've just realised I forgot to record my top movies of 2024. Is April too late to release a video about your favourite movies from the previous year? Maybe? But yeah, back to Mufasa: The Lion King. I mean, the CGI is top tier. It's pretty flawless. Some of the scenes with water, you're like, that water is real. There's no way that's CGI. But, it is CGI. And even though Mr. Hamilton himself, Lin-Manuel Miranda, was on song duties, I'm going to say there was zero memorable tunes, but there is actually the brother tune actually did stick in my head a little bit after the fact. So, I'll ease up on it a little bit for that. But that's the only one. And any time they used parts of Hans Zimmer's original '93 score, it just reminded you it reminded you of how good the original animated movie is, and how not good the 2019 remake and this prequel to the 2019 remake was. So this is a prequel to a live action remake of a beloved Disney movie, and Disney is not doing too well right now with the live action remakes. I would say if you want more Lion King content, the animated sequels that went straight to video, straight to DVD in the 90s, Lion King 2 and Lion King 3, I think in the UK one of them was even called Lion King 1.5, and it's actually kind of a prequel as well. They're better than this. And also the Lion Guard animated TV show that was on the Disney Channel, which I tried to find it on Disney Plus and I couldn't find it, but that's actually pretty decent as well. Like, the story of that was better than this. So yeah, top tier CGI, but a soulless cash grab, let's be honest. Mads Mikkelsen was cool as a bad guy, he always is, but yeah, wasn't a huge fan of this one, to be honest. Let's jump back in quick here. David, Collector Movie Man, thought Mufasa: Lion King was cute. Not the greatest movie, but cute. I mean, if the kids enjoy it, that's one thing. But I took both kids to see it, and none of them, our two youngest kids even, who are 8 and 11. Yeah. None of them were that impressed with it either. They do like the 2019, quote-unquote live-action one, though. But, yeah, I wasn't that impressed. I've already made my list for movies for 2026. I have 15 movies I want to see in theatres. Ooh, give me like the most anticipated one for 2026. Right, let's crack on. This is an interesting one. So this is on Netflix, and this is one that my partner was watching, and I kind of came in like 5 minutes after it started, so I missed the first 5 minutes, so can't give it an honest full review. How to describe this one? So it's a documentary about waste and recycling, and like specifically to do with like a product's end of life and the responsibility for that. Like, should part of that responsibility be on the manufacturer, on the retailer? Like, it's hard. Yeah, this one's a hard one to describe. Basically, it's about like, just because it's a very consumer-based society we live in a wasteful society. You throw clothes in a charity bin, and those charity bags go in containers and get shipped across the world, but then they end up just lining a beach somewhere. Like, that's one of the segments in this documentary that was quite shocking. However, and same with electronics, like laptops being designed and phones being designed to be disposable. They last 2 years, but like they're designed to be phone contracts, cars. People replace their car every 2 or 3 years. People replace their phone every 2 or 3 years. Laptops don't have replaceable batteries, replaceable chips and RAM and things like that. And so that's part of this documentary. So it's an interesting concept, and it's an intriguing idea to look at. Half of the documentary is good, but the message that it's trying to tell, or the message it's trying to get across, I felt was severely overshadowed by the fact that they've clearly used a lot of AI in this documentary. As another review, I think I'd put this on my Letterboxd from someone else's Letterboxd review. They use, they're highlighting one issue with today's society, but they're using another issue with today's society to make that point. They're using AI created content to tell their story, which in a time when creative people, when artists and filmmakers and writers and graphic designers are fighting against AI, this documentary uses AI for its voiceover, it uses AI for its imagery, and that unfortunately overshadowed the message it was trying to make. But it was quite an interesting watch. I'll give it that. So that's called Buy Now, The Shopping Conspiracy, and I'm pretty sure that was on Netflix. Quickly jump back into the chat. David, Collector Movie Man, Christopher Nolan's new movie, The Odyssey. I just saw today, I think on Instagram, some of the behind the scenes, the paparazzi shots of Tom Holland and Matt Damon in costume. That's interesting. That's interesting as well, because unless I'm mistaken, it's kind of set around the same time and tells the same stories / same characters ish as a movie I saw at the Glasgow Film Festival starring Ralph Fiennes called The Return. He plays Odysseus, which was the character that Sean Bean played in the Brad Pitt Troy movie. So the review for The Return, was part of my Glasgow Film Festival live stream. The link to that will be in the description below, but I'll also clip it and put it as a separate review when it gets a cinema release here, which I think is sometime in April. So that's The Return with Ralph Fiennes, where he plays Odysseus. And I'm pretty sure this movie deals with the same character, unless I'm mistaken. But yeah, that's an interesting one. And Nolan, we trust. Nolan fanboys. I'm one as well. Number 2 would be Dune Messiah. Is Dune Messiah coming out in 2026? Is that? I don't think that's confirmed yet, is it? Like, they haven't even started filming it. Supergirl. And number 4, Clayface. Definitely looking forward to Clayface. Randomly, that's one of my kids' favourite Batman villains. For no other reason other than he was in the Lego Batman video game, which we played a lot when he was younger. So for some reason, my boy gravitated towards Clayface. So he's very much looking forward to that. He couldn't believe it when I told him they were making a movie of that. I think he still doesn't believe it. But yeah, I'm intrigued to see where they go with Clayface. Supergirl, we'll see what happens with Superman, first of all. And then June Messiah, ooh, that's a tough one, because I don't want to catch more hate, but I'm not a fan of either June movies. I got my first troll with my June 2 review. Someone really didn't like the fact that I didn't like June 2. So, yeah, I'm not looking forward to that, but I'll definitely go and see it. And then we'll go back in here. 30 Days of Night was the next movie that we watched in January. We watched this with our oldest. She wanted to see a new horror movie that she'd not seen before. Thinks she fancies Josh Hartnett as well. This was an interesting one because this sent me off on a massive rant about Amazon Prime and the fact that they added adverts into their service that you pay for already, because I thought I had a physical copy of this. I thought I had the Blu-ray or at least the DVD, but it turns out I didn't. So we checked the streaming services, and lo and behold, yeah, it's on Amazon Prime. But this was the first time I must have, because I know the ads on the paid service from Prime Video had been around for a good 6, 9, maybe even 12 months, but I'd never really noticed it as an issue until watched 30 Days of Night, and it was bloody brutal. It was like every 10 minutes or something, so it was very annoying. But that's a different video, which I actually did. Like that night I recorded a rant on that, so I'll link that in the comments below as well. But the movie itself, this is a solid movie, and I didn't know they made a sequel. It doesn't star any of the original cast, but they did make a sequel to this. Apparently it's not that good. I'll maybe check it out one day, but this is a solid movie. I think it probably didn't do the gangbusters at the box office, but I do remember watching it when it came out. It's Ben Foster and Danny Huston. I mean, those are two, like, you know, A-grade actors, and when you get like actors of that caliber to support, you know, your main leads, you know, Melissa George and Josh Hartnett, like, they're brilliant in this. Danny Huston as the lead vampire, like, he doesn't speak English, it's like a made up vampire language, but you can tell he clearly committed to that role. Same with Ben Foster, who I'll speak about in another video fairly soon, because he's in a movie called Sharp Corner, which was at the Glasgow Film Festival, which is bloody brilliant. And as far as I know, sadly that's not getting a UK cinema release. But yeah, 30 Days of Night, that's a good movie. That is a good movie, a good wee horror movie. It's so, like, dark. I know that's it seems obvious because it's, you know, 30 Days of Night, but just, it looks great. It's suitably gory for the gore fans. It's scary. It's a very underrated horror movie, I think, and everyone, all the actors in it do a great job. Again, specifically Danny Huston and Ben Foster, they're really good in this. So yeah, 30 Days of Night. Watched it on Prime Video and immediately wanted to cancel my Amazon subscription because of those stupid adverts that they're making you watch, even though you pay for it. Anyway, let's jump back into the comments real quick. Let's see, David says, I think Clayface going to be rated R because they said it's supposed to be like a horror-based movie. Oh, my 11-year-old will not be happy to hear that. But, you know, if that's the case, we'll watch it when it comes out on Blu-ray. The reason I've got June Messiah in 2026 is on Letterboxd. That's what it says when it's supposed to come out. If that changes, I'll add a different movie. Yeah, mate, I'll be shocked if that comes out in 2026. Like, even if it's December 2026, that means they've only got, 19 months to write, film, edit, post-production. It's not impossible, but, like, I'd be shocked if that comes out in 2026. Best movie saw at the Glasgow Film Festival. It's funny you ask, because I literally, the most recent video on the page is that. I think it's a movie called The Ballad of Wallis Island that is getting a cinema release in the UK. I think it's sometime in April that comes out. It's a heartfelt comedy about well, I'm not going to do another full review on it, but it's, yeah, that was definitely my movie of the festival. It's called Ballad of Wallis Island. I did a full review for it as part of the Glasgow Film Festival live stream, and then I clipped it and added a few bits to it and put it out as a separate video. So it's shorter than my usual reviews. It's only 4 minutes or so, so some people will be happy about that. It's not 13 minutes like usual, it's only 4 minutes. Ballad of Wallis Island, bloody brilliant. It's got a limited release in the States just now, I think, just in New York and LA, and then it gets a wider release in the States in a couple of weeks. It gets a release here in the UK, but I'm not sure how wide, again, in a couple of weeks. So that's my film at the Glasgow Film Festival, The Ballad of Wallis Island. Focus Features are releasing it in the States. I'm not sure who's doing it here. Dave says, if June Messiah comes out in 2026, Zendaya will have 4 movies that come out that year, and her boyfriend will have 3 that year. Yeah, all of this leads to me almost sure that there's no chance that's coming out in 2026. Right, let's move on. After 30 Days of Night. 10-day gap with no movies. I probably forgot to log a few here. What would I have watched? Anyway, I think at this point in January, I'm trying to catch up on as many Oscar movies as I could. So, watched A Real Pain, which is the Jesse Eisenberg directed and starring movie with Kieran Culkin alongside him. It's very much a two-hander between Kieran Culkin and Jesse Eisenberg, and it's pretty decent. You can see why, Kieran Culkin was getting a lot of buzz and won a lot of awards. I'm sure he did win the Oscar for Best Supporting Actor. I think fairly deservedly so. It is quite a standout performance. It was good, and I did enjoy it, but it didn't stay with me. Like, it's not a movie I don't think I'll ever choose to sit and watch it again. Like, if someone else wanted to watch it, like if my partner wants to sit and watch it, I would sit and watch it with him, because it is a good movie, but it's not one I'm desperate to see again, and it wasn't one that I liked enough to want to buy and own. So there's that. I think I wrote on my letterboxd here as well, Eisenberg ironically felt like his performance was a little bit poorer. Like you'd see him acting, if that even makes sense. But as a writer-director, I thought this was brilliant. But yeah, not a movie that I'll probably sit and watch again, but a great performance and worthy of all the praise that he got. After that, continuing the Oscars movies, Conclave, which I'm sure was one of the ones nominated for Best Movie. If you told me that I would enjoy a movie about a bunch of priests talking about priesty stuff, I would have thought you were mental. But I did. This is a movie about priests talking about priesty stuff, but it's really entertaining. And it's quite gripping, and great performances from Stanley Tucci, from Ralph Fiennes. Is it Rafe or Ralph? Mr. Fiennes. John Lithgow's in there as well. It's always great to see him. He'll always be. Whenever I think of John Lithgow, 2 things come to mind: the Trinity Killer in Dexter season 4, I think, and Quaylen in Cliffhanger. Which, speaking of Cliffhanger, complete random tangent, I just learned maybe a week or two ago, John Lithgow was doing one of those Variety, GQ, YouTube videos talking about his iconic roles, or one of those videos. If I can find it, I'll put it in the comments below. Anyway, so he's talking about Cliffhanger, and apparently, he was always cast in the movie, but he was a second in command villain. Someone else had been cast as the lead villain, and they pulled out just before filming started. So rather than replace that role, they just combined both roles. So John Lithgow ended up being the number 1 villain and the number 2 villain. I'm sure they said the name of the actor, but for the life of me, I cannot remember. But that was a good random bit of trivia that I didn't actually know about Cliffhanger. And while we're on the subject of Cliffhanger, the 4K disc for that is stunning. Cliffhanger's one of those movies that's mid-90s, so it's pre-CGI, or at least pre-heavy CGI use. So everything's real in Cliffhanger, and the 4K transfer for that looks stunning. It's grainy, you've got the film grain, but not in a bad way. It's just, the 4K disc for Cliffhanger looks great. If you're a fan of that movie and you haven't upgraded from DVD or Blu-ray to 4K, I can highly recommend the 4K disc for Cliffhanger. It looks great. And it's a great movie. It's, you know, it's like a seminal 90s action movie. Why are we talking about Cliffhanger? John Lithgow, who's in Conclave. See, brought it back. Yeah, Conclave. Wasn't expecting I would like a movie about priests, but I did. Political thriller, detective drama, but with priests in the Vatican, is how I would describe it. Fiennes was great, as was Tucci. Decent, but again, it's not a movie that I'll probably watch again. It's not a movie that I'm going to want to own. It wouldn't have been a movie that I would have put in the Best Picture running, but I would have nominated Stanley Tucci for Best Supporting Actor, and I think he did get that nomination. But anyway, Conclave, ticking off another Oscar movie. Let's quickly jump back into the chat. David, Collector Movie Man. I love Conclave. That was my second favourite movie from last year. Really? Christ, that's interesting. What did you like about it? And what was your first favourite movie from last year? And while you're typing that, I will move on to the next one, which was One Direction, This Is Us. So, obviously, I'm a huge One Direction fan, given that I'm a middle-aged man, and this has been one of my favourite movies of all time. It's not. That's a joke. Well, you know, jokes are normally funny. This was our oldest as a One Direction fan, and I think this got a limited re-release in the cinema a few months ago, and she went to see it with a friend, and I thought, I wonder how much the Blu-ray for that is. It's probably not that dear. So I think I jumped on Amazon or eBay, and it was only like a £5 or something. So I picked that up for her to, like, you know, try and like incept the kids into being fans of physical media, failing at that miserably. Although no, the youngest does like having a few DVDs on herself. She's got, what has she got on herself? So she's 8, but she's got some of her favourite movies here. She's got Howard the Duck, the Batman box set of the first 4 movies, like, you know, Batman Returns, Batman Forever and Batman and Robin, and one or two of the Jaws editions. Like, she's got them in her room, so there might be hope for her. But I think the oldest one and the middle child, I don't think I'm going to succeed in making them physical media fans. But anyway, I picked up One Direction, This Is Us for our oldest for that reason, and, you know, to give her a nice wee present. And then, of course, that meant I had to sit and watch it with her. So we sat and watched that. I remember when that came out. When was it? What did it say there? 2013. Christ. So that's 12 years ago that came out. I didn't see it when it came out. I only saw it recently when I got that Blu-ray for our oldest. But I remember when it came out thinking, this is interesting. It's a Morgan Spurlock documentary. Ooh, that's probably going to not. It's probably that probably means it won't be your usual, like, puff piece and promotional, like, material type documentary, because it's Morgan Spurlock. So we watched it, and yeah, it was very much a sanitised, only show the good stuff, you know, promotional documentary. It didn't feel like a Morgan Spurlock documentary. It kind of felt like, and, you know, I know he passed away recently, so I don't want to speak ill of the dead, but it didn't feel like a Morgan Spurlock documentary. One for the fans only. One for the Wondeers. Wondeers. After that, watched Saturday Night, and have I got a full review for this? I think I've got a full review for this on the channel. This was quite interesting because it got a limited release here in the UK. Maybe even a nationwide release. It didn't stay in cinemas long, but it did get a cinema release in the UK, which is interesting. So, you know, well done to the studio and the distributor for getting a movie like this into cinemas in the UK, because Saturday Night Live, while a complete, like, staple of American pop culture, it's not over here. I think to this day I've never actually watched a full episode from start to finish, because I don't think they show it live here in the UK. Maybe they do these days with, like, you know, various streaming partnerships. But yeah, growing up, completely wasn't aware of Saturday Night Live. It wasn't until, you know, in my early adult years when you hear actors and comedians talking about Saturday Night Live, and then obviously in the age of YouTube, you always see clips from Saturday Night Live. But yeah, to this day I've never watched the full episode of it. So the fact that it got a cinema release in the UK was quite interesting. and I'm glad it did, because this is actually, it's quite a good movie. What did I give it? I think 7 out of 10. Yeah, 3.5 out of 5, 7 out of 10. It's a really good movie. It tells the story of the first episode of Saturday Night Live. Like, ironically, it's almost in real time for 90 minutes leading up to the first episode going live. So you've got young actors, you've got actors playing young versions of Chevy Chase, of Dan Aykroyd, of Billy Crystal, of John Belushi, of Lorne Michaels, who is the kind of creative mind behind Saturday Night Live. It's obviously set in the 70s. I think, what did it say there? Yeah, so 1975. It's set in the 70s, but obviously made last year or 2 years ago. It's directed by Jason Reitman, who did, completely escapes me now. What did he do? Did I write it here? He did the smoking one with, do you know what? I'm going to have to just actually click on it. And Jason Reitman, who directed, why can't I remember? Anyway, he made some good movies. Thank You for Smoking is one. I'm sure he did a couple of the recent Ghostbusters movies. He's an interesting director, son of Ivan Reitman, who good director, obviously famous director as well. I'm losing my train of thought here, talking about the Saturday Night movie. It's pretty good. I might, if they release like a steelbook of that and it's got some decent special features, I might pick that one up, because I would definitely like to watch that again with commentary. That would be, like, especially if they get the cast involved as well. I'd really love to know what the cast's thoughts were on playing, these real life characters, these real life actors that are still alive and still working today, like playing a young Dan Aykroyd. What was that like? Playing a young Chevy Chase. What was that like? So yeah, it was a good movie. I was surprised, pleasantly, but surprised that it got a cinema release in the UK. And I'll link to the full review below. Let's jump back into the chat real quick. Let's see, David saying, Ralph Fiennes. It is Ralph, isn't it? I keep saying Rafe for some reason. Ralph Fiennes should have won Best Actor at the Oscars, not Adrian Brody. I absolutely hated The Brutalist. Thought it was boring, and there was unnecessary sex scenes in that movie. Ooh, I've not seen it, but now I'm intrigued. I've not seen The Brutalist. Not that I'm against long movies, but I just never got a chance to catch it at the cinema. Ralph Fiennes was good in Conclave, but was it a Best Actor movie? First favourite was Wicked from last year. Oh, that's interesting. I never saw Wicked until February, so that'll be in the next live stream that I do, mate. Wasn't a fan of Wicked, to be honest, and that's not because I hate musicals. I like musicals. I saw the Wicked stage show like 20 years in New York. That sounds like I'm bragging, like I'm a jet set. I'm not. I just happened to be on a holiday in New York and we saw Wicked. But yeah, wasn't a big fan of the movie. I mean, how do you make a 2.5 hour movie from Act 1 of a musical and they don't call it Wicked Part 1, so people don't know that it's splitting it in two seems like I think it's hard to argue that that's anything other than a money move from the studio. But anyway, the whole reason I like Conclave, the dialogue, finding out how the Pope was getting picked and stuff, I thought that was all very interesting. 100% agree with that. The dialogue was great, the acting was great. That specific story of the Conclave was quite interesting. I did actually know a little bit about that randomly, to go back to something I was talking about earlier on. Paul, the guy I used to work with in an office, at the start of this live stream when I was talking about the Superman Returns, like vlogs that they were doing, and me and Paul would watch them, that's what, 2004 or something this would have been. He, at one point in his life, was training to be a priest, like in Rome, Vatican City, that whole 9 yards. He ended up not being a priest, but I remember him telling us that in the office one day, like explaining the whole white smoke, black smoke, priests basically locked in until our cardinals locked in until they nominate a new pope. So I did actually know a little bit about that ahead of time, but the whole thing was still interesting to see and hear. Your mum loves Saturday Night Live. Your mom. Yeah, that's what I mean though. Like, that's like anyone in America, or even North America, include Canada as well, I would imagine, has grew up with Saturday Night Live. Like, whether they liked it or not, whether they watched it or not, like, I would imagine every single American is aware of Saturday Night Live and has probably seen it at least once. Whereas that's just not the case in the UK at all. So it was interesting to see. Rakesh's conclave was super interesting. Enjoyed understanding what happens behind closed doors when a new pope is to be selected. Yeah, so that's what David was saying as well. It is interesting to see that, and it was a good movie. I don't think it was a best picture movie, but it, I think the subject matter and the calibre of actors that they had in it, it was very much awards bait. I don't mean that as an insult, although it kind of is an insult. Yeah, it was good, but it wasn't, best picture good. I was on the fence with Saturday Night, but the post watch. Hang on, I was on the fence with Saturday Night, but the post watch I went on a Saturday Night Live YouTube binge and never realised how many big comedy movie stars started life on Saturday Night Live. Yeah, that's what I was meaning earlier on. I wasn't aware of Saturday Night Live until you start hearing like all these famous actors like Eddie Murphy and from back in the 80s, and Dan Aykroyd, and even more recently like Pete Davidson and like Will Ferrell, Tina Fey. These are all Saturday Night Live, alumni. But it just never, as far as I know, it was never like broadcast live here in the UK because, well, I mean, what, Saturday Night Live in New York, what are they, 7 hours, 8 hours behind? So 11 PM there would be like, what, 5 AM here? So obviously that's probably why it wasn't broadcast live. I might be wrong about that. Maybe it is broadcast live on like, Sky Atlantic or something like that. But it definitely wasn't when we were like, when we were growing up, 80s and 90s at least. Yeah. Right, I think that's us caught up on comments. Let's crack on. Only got a couple of movies left. Finally, towards the end of January, got a chance to see Nosferatu. And this is an interesting one because, like, everyone, especially horror fans, seemed to love this movie. I did not. Nicholas Hoult is brilliant in it. I'll start off with that. The scene where he first meets Dracula. So, not Dracula, Count Orlok. The scene where the scene where Nicholas Hoult's character, who's not Jonathan Harkins, meets Count Orlok, who's not Count Dracula, is brilliant. Like, the fear in his face during that first encounter is uncomfortable to watch, but you cannot take your eyes off of him. Like, the way that scene was shot with was it one continuous take? It might have been one continuous take, but the way it was shot, and as I said, the fear on Nicholas Hoult's face was like, he's brilliant in this movie. And what's his face? Skarsgård is suitably creepy as fake Dracula. Lily Rose Depp, good as well. A lot of facial contortions going on with her, but the whole time I'm watching this movie, I'm just thinking, this is just a remake of Dracula. And I know that that's kind of the point of this movie, like Nosferatu, the original story, the original movie from, like, I don't know, 1910 or whenever it was. Like, it was a rip-off of Dracula, but they couldn't get the rights to Dracula, so to Bram Stoker's Dracula, so they just made their own, duped version. See, dupe, I can speak, kid talk. They made their own rip-off version and called it Nosferatu, and then obviously they've made movies, a couple of remakes of Nosferatu, this being the most recent one. But the whole time I'm watching Robert Eggers' Nosferatu, I'm just thinking, the Francis Ford Coppola Dracula is a far superior movie, and this one isn't. It's not drastically different. Like, stylistically it's a little bit different, but not massively. Like, the whole body deformity aspect and body decaying aspect of the Dracula / Nosferatu character, I suppose, is a little bit different, but the story's the same. It's the same story. It just felt it was hard to shake the shadows of Francis Ford Coppola's Bram Stoker's Dracula when watching Robert Eggers' Nosferatu. Yeah, and then it just felt like it ended. Like, it felt like we were just starting the third act and it ended. And I was left a little bit like, huh. So it ends abruptly, and it's not as good as Francis Ford Coppola's Dracula. I know it has its fans. I know a lot of people loved it, especially in the horror crowd. There's an Instagram group chat that I'm in where it's horror based one, and I think everyone in there loves Robert Eggers' Nosferatu, but I did not. So yeah, not a huge fan. I think I gave it 3 out of 5, 6 out of 10. That's probably maybe being generous. I would probably downgrade that to 2.5/5 out of 10. Yeah, not a huge fan of that. Let's quickly jump back into the chat before we get to the last movie. So David says he enjoyed Nosferatu. Yeah, again, I think I'm very aware that I'm in the minority with not liking Nosferatu. But, there you go. I didn't know Johnny Depp's daughter played. Yeah, that's Lily Rose Depp. Johnny Depp's daughter plays the female character in Nosferatu. I can't remember the name of the movie. Let's see. Rakesh says Nosferatu is a beautifully shot movie. He watched it 3 times. You watched it 3 times in the cinema? You watched Nosferatu 3 times in the cinema? Where do you find the time? I can't remember the last time I saw a movie more than once in the cinema. I think probably... What was the last movie I watched more than once in the cinema? It might have been a more recent one, but the one I can think of would be Oppenheimer. I remember going to see that actually twice in the one day, but that's because I was doing a comparison video between the digital IMAX version and the 70mm non-IMAX version. I'll put that video below as well. That ended up being like, back, when was that? The summer of 2023. I'd only just started the YouTube channel, about a couple of months, and that ended up being like a really popular video, so that was quite cool. That was like the first video to like get more than like 1,000 views or something, so that was really cool. But yeah, that was probably the last movie I saw more than once in the cinema, was Oppenheimer. But yeah, so you saw Nosferatu 3 times. That's dedication. I didn't know you enjoyed it that much. How did you see it 3 times? I'm still stuck on that. Yeah, look, it looks great. Like, it's got a good look to it, but it doesn't feel drastically, even the look didn't feel drastically different from Francis Ford Coppola's Bram Stoker's Dracula. That's, say that 3 times really fast. Wow, that's interesting. Right, let's go back to Letterboxd and crack on with the last movie. So the last movie, January this year, was Sing Sing. This is me still trying to catch up on as many Oscar movies as I can before the Oscars happened. Every year I print off, the list of all the Oscars movies and try and make sure I watch all of them so I can do my own little, version of what movies I would choose. And I've got this rule with myself that I'm not allowed to pick a winner in a category unless I've seen every movie in that category. Some years I get through all the movies, some years I barely get through any of them. This year I got through about half, but that meant that if I'm following my own rule, I couldn't vote on really any category apart from, I think adapted screenplay was one I could vote on, and visual effects, because those are the only 2 that I'd seen every movie on, I think. Anyway, I say I'm not allowed to vote. It's my own. it's a company of one. It's a voting pool of one. It's just me, and it's my own little Oscars tick list. Anyway, Sing Sing. Very strong lead performance from Coleman Domingo. It's great to see him kind of like breaking out, I suppose, and getting a lot more recognition. I think I first saw him in the Walking Dead spin-off, Fear the Walking Dead. Like he started off as like one of the ensemble casts, but he was one of the few characters who was in, I think he was in every single season of Fear the Walking Dead. He kind of like piqued my interest from as early as that, which would have been, when did Fear the Walking Dead start? At least maybe 15 years ago. Yeah, this is a prison drama based on a true story. It's got a great look to it, great cinematography, like kind of fine film grain. It looks like it's a documentary crew filming inside a prison. Like, it's all handheld, grainy film footage following the actors around. It's interesting. It doesn't really dwell on any of the specific crimes that any of the characters do. It just focuses on them, and this little like acting theatre group that they have in prison, and it kind of, in a non-preachy way, it kind of talks about, or at least like introduces the concept and the subject of like rehabilitation. Like, does it exist? Is it a good thing? Things like that. So really good performance. I think I remember thinking at the Oscars, I thought he might be, because I'm sure he was nominated for Best Actor, and of all the movies I had seen, he was my favourite of the ones that were nominated for Best Actor. I know Adrian Brody won for The Brutalist. I've not seen that yet, but yeah, I thought Colman Domingo was really, really good in this. Like, really good in this. It's worth a watch if you can track this down. I think it might actually be on Amazon Prime now, on Prime Video. But yeah, Sing Sing was really good. And that was my last film of January 2025. Right, that didn't take that long. How long was that? Maybe just over an hour and 10 minutes or so. We'll jump back into the comments before we call it a night, guys. Let's see, David saying, Scottish Geek Guy, are you a fan of Mission Impossible movies with Tom Cruise? Yes, huge fan of the Mission Impossible movies, to the point where I would venture to say that's probably, I'm not talking about like box office success, but in terms of like quality of movie wise, that's probably the most successful franchise. Well, if we had 7 or 8 movies in the Mission Impossible franchise, and I would say that every single one of them, yes, even Mission Impossible 2, which I know a lot of people, poop on, but big John Woo fan, so I really like that. But yeah, I think Tom Cruise Mission Impossible movies, name another movie franchise that's got at least 7 movies in it, where every movie is at least consistently a 7 out of 10, say. I don't think, even if you drop that to 6 movies, like, a 6 movie franchise or more. Jurassic Park franchise. Now, the first Jurassic Park's my favourite movie of all time, but not every movie in that franchise is at least a 7 out of 10. Some of them are not great. The Dominion was pretty poor. That's like a 5 out of 10. So that doesn't qualify. Star Wars, I'm a big Star Wars fan, but that franchise has some stinkers in it as well. It would be interesting to see what people's thoughts on that are, because, like I said, I don't think there's a franchise that exists that's got at least 6 movies where every movie is at least a 7 out of 10. Now, maybe the MCU, but that's like, there's 35 movies in that, and no, in fact, because the movies like the Marvels and Eternals, and Wakanda Forever, like, they're not 7 out of 10. They're like, a lot less. Like, the Marvels is like a 4 out of 10 movie. So, yeah, I think the Mission franchise is probably the most successful overall in terms of quality. So, big fan of that, and looking forward to, well, they're not calling it Dead Reckoning Part 2 anymore. What are they calling it? The Final Reckoning. That's another issue I've got. So the steelbook I've got says Dead Reckoning Part 1, and then the next steelbook's going to say The Final Reckoning. So the OCD in me is going to have to get like some custom spines to fix that for the steelbook collection. Sing Sing is on HBO Max. We don't get HBO Max in the UK here, David. But like I said, I'm sure I saw it on Prime Video. So for the UK at least, I think it might be on Prime Video. But yeah, we don't get HBO Max, sadly. I think the only movie franchise I can think of might be Marvel. Yeah, but like literally, as you just said there, not every Marvel movie is at least a 7 out of 10. Like, even a die-hard MCU fan, of which I am one. I literally have an MCU tattoo. But yeah, that's the Marvels. That disqualifies it right away, because that is not a 7 out of 10. I think I give it 4 out of 10, or maybe 5 out of 10 in my review. It's definitely not a 7 out of 10. I actually liked Eternals, the Marvels I never finished, Wakanda Forever I never finished. There you go. Eternals isn't terrible, but I don't think it's great. It's actually oddly one of my boys' favourite MCU movies, which is curious, because it's quite a slow paced movie, and he's a child. But yeah, it's one of his favourite movies. But yeah, Marvels you never finished. There's probably a reason, because it's not that good. Wakanda Forever, he never finished. I'm probably being a wee bit harsh on Wakanda Forever. But again, it's not... All three of those movies, I wouldn't say are at least a 7 out of 10. So, yeah. Not to sound like a broken record, but the Mission movies, I don't think there's a franchise that's as consistently good as them. Most people will point to Mission 2 as being not great. I do have a nostalgic soft spot for that movie, in that I'm a huge John Woo fan. So yeah, there we go. Jordan McPherson, how you doing, mate? Thanks for tuning in. You've tuned in right at the very end of the live stream. We were going through pretty much everything I watched on, if I'll go back to the split screen, we were going through everything I watched in January of 2025, because I'm falling behind on my live streams here. So yeah, there you go. Speedrun: Man of Steel 2, Jaws 2, Batman v Superman, Zack Snyder's Justice League, Mufasa: The Lion King, Buy Now, The Shopping Conspiracy, 30 Days of Night, A Real Pain, Conclave, One Direction, This Is Us, Saturday Night, Nosferatu, and Sing Sing. Those are all the movies that I watched in January. Right. I think we're going to wrap it up soon here, guys. I enjoyed Mission Impossible 2. I think it's a good... Okay, so are we reading that as you enjoyed Mission Impossible as well? Or you enjoyed Mission Impossible 2, as in the second movie you think is a good movie? I'm assuming you're talking about you're saying Mission Impossible 2, the one with the one that's directed by John Woo, and you think that's a good movie. Yeah, I think it's a good movie as well. But yeah, I'd love to know if anyone in fact, I'll say this in one sentence so I can clip it and put it out as a YouTube short. Is there a movie franchise that's got at least 6 or more movies where every movie is at least 7 out of 10? My answer to that is Mission Impossible, and I don't think there's any other franchise that fits that bill. But let me know in the comments below if you have any thoughts on that. What movie franchise has at least 6 or more movies where every movie is at least 7 out of 10? I say Mission Impossible is the only one, but let me know in the comments below what you think. There we go. There's a nice wee clip for YouTube Shorts. Hope you have a good night. Me too, mate. Yeah, you too. David, thanks very much for sticking with us for the full hour or so. Jordan says, have a rewatch. That'd be great if you do, mate. Thanks very much. I try and do at least one live stream a month where I'll basically talk. I'll go through my Letterboxd diary, talking about every movie that I watched that month. There isn't really any consistency as to when I do the live streams. Sometimes it's a Wednesday night, sometimes it's a Sunday afternoon, sometimes it's every month, sometimes I'm 3 months behind, hence why it's the end of March and I'm talking about movies I watched in January. But yeah, there we go. Yeah, I enjoyed Mission Impossible 2. It's a good movie. Sorry, I thought movie went in. Yeah. All the missions are good. Right. I think that's us caught up on the comments, guys. We'll call it a night there. Thanks very much for watching. I will I'll put links to all the videos that I talked about in the description below. The Glasgow Film Festival movies that we talked about, I'll put the reviews and the live stream I did for that in the comments as well. The Batman vs Superman announcement video, I'll put that down as well, because I'm sure that's still on YouTube. There'll be multiple versions of that on YouTube. That was a seminal moment for me in my my DCEU enjoyment. And yeah, I think that's us. So thanks again for tuning in, and I'll catch you in the next one.